How's it going, friends? My name is Friggy and welcome to Should I Play Watch Dogs? Oh man, this is a crazy game. Leading up to this game, there was so much hype initially. One of the biggest games of E3 2012. Everybody was excited. But the closer we've been getting to the release date, the anti-hype has been building and really killing momentum for this game. You have the resolution, you have all of these problems, leaked game copies out, and then just this horrendous launch with Uplay, where some people weren't even able to get the game. Crazy. But before we start, I gotta talk about the actual user reception for this game, because it's a fucking joke. I went on Metacritic, which is a dumb website in a lot of ways, because people only look at the numbers and not what people are saying, but I read a lot of the user scores. And right now, I think on PC, the user score is about 4.4. 4.4. In the red. That is crazy. This game is not a 4.4 out of 10. Nowhere near that. I'll explain to you why that's happened, though. People are disappointed. They are disappointed. And I don't blame them. I'm disappointed to a degree. People are disappointed because this game was hyped so much, had so many lofty expectations put on it that it could not possibly have reached. And so now that people are disappointed, they're saying that the game is bad. And they're losing their minds over it and letting their disappointment overtake their ability to critically judge. And do you know who's to blame for everybody being disappointed? Everyone. IGN, GameSpot, all of the YouTubers, and myself as well. All of us are to blame. Every single one of us, including you and me. Because we allowed ourselves to get hyped up. And hype is one of the worst things you can do. If you come into a game expecting it to be the second coming of Christ, you're going to be disappointed when that game turns out not to be like that. It's better to be pleasantly surprised than hyped and disappointed. All of that said, is Watch Dogs a good game? Yes, it is a good game. It's a solid game. Is it Game of the Year potential? No. No. There's no way it's going to be Game of the Year, at least not for me right now. But as it stands right now, Watch Dogs is a good game. But we have to talk about the PC port, because it's a joke. It is a joke. It runs like crap. Absolute shit. And it doesn't matter what computer you have, you can't run this at 1080p on Ultra at 60 frames per second consistently. It can't be done. It cannot be done. This port is fucking dog shit. It's as if they just took the console version and just stuck it on PC and did no optimization whatsoever. And it shows. I'm running on an i7-3770, which is a good CPU. Sure, it's last gen, but it's still more powerful than most of the i5s you can get right now. I'm running on an R9 290. R9 290. It cost me $450 fucking dollars to put this into my computer. And I put this into my computer expecting that sort of 60 frames per second, because you guys know me, that matters to me. That's why I didn't buy the console version. You care about 30, go on console. I don't want to hear shit like, oh, but just deal with it. Who cares if it's running at 30 frames per second on your computer? Fuck off. If I pay that much money, I want to get the 60 frames per second experience. And I can't run this on Ultra at 60 frames per second. All of the gameplay you're seeing right now, for recording purposes, is on high. Now, I heard that there's meant to be a driver coming out for AMD cards. One's already come out for Nvidia, because it's an Nvidia optimized game, but they haven't optimized it for AMD. It's bullshit. It just doesn't run well enough. So I'd say that if you're running on a lower end AMD card, don't buy this game right now. You gotta wait. However, for those of you with beefy computers or looking at buying it on consoles, let's talk about the game now. The positives. This is a massive, richly detailed open world. It's very well designed. There's a lot to see and do in this world. Lots of missions, lots of buildings you can go into, lots of side missions and everything like that. And just walking around can be entertaining. Just hacking civilians, listening to their phone calls, and even stumbling across potential crimes. But we'll get to those later. The story is decent. At least right now. You know, at first when I came into it, I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, here we go. It's going to be one of these revenge stories. Not going to be very interesting, but, you know, it's alright. It's starting to develop, and apparently it really takes off in this third act. I'm currently halfway through the second act and have played for about 6 hours just so that you know where I am. However, the lines are said with conviction because the acting is pretty damn good. I'm surprised I actually like Aiden Pearce as much as I do. I thought he might be a bit monotonous and not very interesting, but I kind of like him. You know, I like him. And let's talk about the graphics. The game has been downgraded even on Ultra on PC from 2012. It has. I've seen videos where reflections don't even show up in the mirror. But it's still a good looking game. It doesn't necessitate the performance that I'm getting at around 30 to 40 frames per second, and sometimes like 25, depending on what I'm looking at. It does not necessitate that. It's a good looking game, but it's a very inconsistent looking game. Some of the main characters are really well detailed. Like, Aiden Pearce is one of the best designed video game characters ever. But yet when you walk on the street, the NPCs look pretty bad in a lot of ways. You know, that's just weird to me. But let's get into the gameplay now. The gunplay is fun. It's fun gunplay. I would actually go and argue that it's a little bit better than Grand Theft Auto 5's gunplay. Grand Theft Auto 5 is still the superior game, but because of the hacking mechanics, it kind of blends well with the gunplay. And the gunplay itself is just solid with a really good cover system, and because Aiden moves so fluently, at least in my opinion, it just makes for a really smooth, fun gunplay experience. And this is aided by the fact that the AI are pretty damn solid. Sometimes they do stupid shit like actually run head on into fucking bullets. But usually they will react in the same way a human will. If you take flanking routes, they'll still be looking for you where you were last. Kind of in the same way that they do it with stealth games. Which is pretty damn good. The hacking mechanics, one of the main features of this game. They can be used creatively if the player puts their mind to it. Usually you can hack into cameras to try and get a look around the area before you go in guns blazing, or you can just go in stealthy. It's a stealth-oriented game, and the hacking mechanics really lend themselves well to stealth. You can detonate bombs on enemies' jackets, you can hack into cameras and try and find guys with codes, and just, you could do it without killing anybody, or even, you know, taking down anybody non-lethally, which is pretty damn good. Driving is touchy at first, but it gets better once you get used to it. It's pretty arcadey. Grand Theft Auto 5 still has better driving mechanics, as it should be, because it's Grand Theft Auto. But you know, the driving in this game is pretty decent. There are a good number of side missions though, I gotta say, and the side missions are pretty damn good. In terms of how they pop up, they'll just pop up all the time. I'll be driving to my next mission, it's like, oh, here's a side mission, go do it. And usually you will, because they're pretty fun. There are things from convoys where you have to attack convoys, detecting criminal activity and, you know, taking down the person before they kill a victim. A lot of things. A fix a contract, and a lot of them are pretty good. I think there's a decent variety, and they haven't gotten repetitive, at least for me. Now, let's talk about the multiplayer, because multiplayer was one of the big things for this game that they hyped up. You know, the multiplayer is pretty damn fun. I have played a good number of them. I've played the 1 versus 1 online hacking, I've done decryption combat, which is like a multiplayer thing, and I've done a race. You know, they're fun. I really enjoy the 1v1. It is very tense to see a real player trying to hunt you down, and as that number goes up and the search radius gets smaller, it really becomes tense. It's fun. It is a lot of fun. And being creative and trying to outsmart them is pretty fun. And then the chase that happens when they catch you is really good. Decryption combat was pretty interesting. I mean, the gameplay mechanics seem to kind of suffer a bit when it's online, like they're less responsive. There's no sort of hard lock aiming, at least not when I'm playing on the gamepad, which is what I've been playing on. That probably needs to be fixed because it makes it very hard for me. But on the whole, I like the multiplayer. It's pretty fun. It's not the main draw of this game, not by a long shot, but it's fun. Now, let's get to the negatives, because there are a lot of negatives that hold this game back from being great. The main problem this game has is that it just has inconsistent game mechanics. Really inconsistent. The morality system is just odd. It doesn't really work properly. I mean, you're gonna become a good guy unless you just go around murdering countless civilians. Because you get good karma for actually doing some of the side missions. It doesn't make any sense. You can only get good karma from doing those side missions, and you can only get bad karma for killing or injuring civilians. That's it. And so far, it hasn't gone into the story at all. You might as well not even be there. And besides, you're still technically a bad guy. You're not really a hero, no matter what you do. So that doesn't make sense to me. The way the police work, it makes no fucking sense. I could go on a fucking shooting spree in a civilian area against a bunch of gangs, and nobody will even call the cops. But if I steal someone's car, they'll call the cops. But all I have to do is nudge them with the car, and then they stop. They won't call them again. It doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? So you rarely have the cops on you unless it's a scripted event, which can be annoying. But it's just inconsistent. And the same thing goes for hacking. Hacking is sometimes good, but then sometimes it just boils down to hold X. And just, take cameras and hold X. Or you can just go on guns blazing. So the hacking is typically good, though it can often be a mixed bag. The soundtrack is a mixed bag as well. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. You're noticing this inconsistency that there is in this game. This game's been in development for 4 years, and they haven't nailed this stuff down. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. The soundtrack has some good songs, and the soundtrack has some bad songs. I mean, I turn off the radio. I hate the radio. Radio is bad. But so was Grand Theft Auto 5's radio, so, it seems like radios have gotten worse over the last few years, but I don't know. And the chases. Chases really become repetitive since you can't actually fire your gun when you're driving, so the only way that you can really avoid players is being a really excellent driver and being able to maneuver through everything, which can be hard if you're not used to the touchy driving mechanics. Or you can blow up steam pipes or make traffic lights, cause crashes, and things like that. They're amusing about the first 2 or 3 times, but then they start to get really repetitive, since those are basically the only things you can do, raising bollards or blockers, things like that to cause crashes. It becomes repetitive. And the same thing goes for on-foot chases. Every time you do a criminal activity side mission, when you intervene, if you don't want to kill the person, which you really shouldn't if you're meant to be a good guy, you have to chase them on foot. And it's the same thing every single time. They'll never do anything different. They'll never get into a gunfight with you. They'll always run away. I don't understand that. And last and not least, the performance, which I've already discussed extensively before. It doesn't run well. And since it doesn't run well on PS4 or Xbox One either, with the whole 30 frames per second, you really have, at launch as it is, you really have no choice if you want to get a 60 frames per second experience, unless you want to play on medium or low, which you shouldn't have to do with a game like this. So, final verdict on Watch Dogs, as of right now, as of what I've played. It's a good game. It's not Game of the Year material, I don't think, unless it really impresses me towards the end, but it's definitely not a bad game. Far from it, in fact. I'm enjoying my time with this game. I find it to be a lot of fun. Am I disappointed with it? To a degree, yeah. Because I put lofty expectations on this game that it really couldn't have delivered in hindsight. But when it comes to games this year, I think the same thing has happened with all of them. All of the major ones, that is. I mean, the fact that South Park is, as of right now, my game of the year is kind of crazy when it's a game that nobody really expected anything from. And that's the problem. It's when you put these lofty expectations on these games that you set yourself up for disappointment. A lot of people came into South Park being, oh, it's gonna be alright, and then they found out it was freaking awesome. But then you have games like Titanfall, Infamous Second Son, I mean, even Thief to a degree, and this, that just have not achieved what they set out to be. Doesn't mean that they're bad games, with the exception of Thief in a lot of people's eyes. Titanfall was a good game, Infamous Second Son was okay, and this game is pretty good. But when it comes to the reception that this game has received from gamers, it just doesn't make any sense. To say that this game is worse than Infamous kind of makes you crazy, because this game is objectively better. Coming from an Infamous fan, this game is objectively better in a lot of ways. Better detailed world, better open world, better side missions, you know, more interesting gameplay, a better story. All of these things that it is objectively better in. And then people say it's worse than Infamous because they got hyped up and disappointed, and Infamous is of course a PlayStation 4 exclusive. These things annoy me. But if you're on PC, I'd say, don't buy this game unless you have a good rig. You have to deal with Uplay and then the performance issues, and then you got to get the drivers and everything, and it crashes sometimes too. On PC, it's not good enough as it is, and they need to do some serious work to get it up to par, because as it is right now, the PC port is not good. It's not good, and it hinders the game because it runs badly, especially when you're driving. But as it is, should you play Watch Dogs? If you had an interest in playing Watch Dogs, you should give it a chance, because it's a fun game. It's not Game of the Year edition. It's just a good game. A really solid open world game. And this is really the only person you're going to see on the internet telling it like it is, because there's so many different sides to it. It's a good game. Just go out and play it, or even rent it if you want, and try it out, and you will probably enjoy it if you're coming into it with an open mind. I'm Fringy, thanks for watching Should I Play Watch Dogs. As always, have a good one.